derivatives on Ethereum. So quick words about VariabL. We aim to offer secure and efficient peer-to-peer derivatives on Ethereum. So quickly, peer-to-peer derivatives. Derivatives are contracts that are used in finance to manage your risk against some market events. So for instance, you may want to increase your exposure to a certain asset or a certain index, or you want to decrease your exposure to it. So peer-to-peer derivatives, it's some people, some business that wants to increase its risk, another one that wants to decrease, and we match them together in a contract. So yeah, so we've launched a prototype last year, but a simple one. So it was a 24-hour contract for difference. So meaning that you could long or short on Ether for a duration of 24 hours. So a shorter, longer together for 24 hours, and 24 hours later, the contract is resolved. And if it went up, the longer wins. So it was really interesting. We had a lot of traders. We learned a lot about the UX, especially the identity component and the signing messages, because in blockchain, you'll always you want your user to sign messages. And yeah, so the actual derivatives were a lot on-chain. So you had the derivative contract coded as a smart contract. So of course it's not efficient and it's really not perfect. So that's why it looked like that. And so now let's take a look about our challenges if we want to compete with centralized exchanges to offer better margin trading and better risk management. So first, if we really want to compete with centralized exchange, we have to be compliant. So VariabL, for now at least, needs to be a permissioned platform with KYC. We need to be as scalable and as easy to use as a centralized exchange. So of course, we need to have the same kind of transaction per second and the same kind of easiness. And the most important point, I guess, is that we have to be as secure as centralized exchange, and that's not easy at all, because we often sell blockchain as something super secure, but actually it's really hard to decentralize some important stuff. So this is something that is the hardest challenge, I would say. And we try to be pragmatic in our approach. We try to use some things that work today and things that are pretty sure to work. We're not trying to theorize that much. Sustainable, we aim for the long term. Really the aim is to have something that works, not to build a hype. And we try to be as flexible as possible. So we want to be agnostic to potential breakthrough that could happen in the ecosystem. So for now we focus on on-chain custody. I think that that's the most important point, the most important challenge that we can do using blockchain is remove the custody of decentralized assets to centralized exchanges. We have decentralized assets, let's have decentralized custody. And we research on how we can maybe decentralize more than just custody. So this past 18 months, we've been doing what? So we didn't go to ICO because I think that both on the regulatory side and even on the understanding of what is a token and how it can be used, it's a bit too early, but we know that tokens are amazing to coordinate a community. So we launched contribution tokens that rewarded alpha testers, and later they're going to be turned into maybe a utility or security token. The part on which we worked the hardest was the scalability of the exchange. We've been working on state channels for the past 18 months, and we have today a working prototype. I think that you'll be able to see it soon. And on the robustness of our derivatives. So we create this zero-sum game between traders. We need to make sure that they are robust. And finally, we've worked a lot about compliance of exchanges in Europe and in compliance in France. So this talk will present a lot about layer 2 recap and what are our specific implementation of layer 2 is about and why we made these choices. So basically, layer 2, the goal is to create off-chain transactions. So transaction in a subnetwork that doesn't use the strong and super expensive consensus that is on Ethereum, but you create your own consensus, and somehow you're linked on-chain. So off-chain, you have users that send messages, and these messages activate events that are deterministic, and you store it in a state of your subnetwork. On-chain, you'll have the way to initiate this subnetwork. Often you'll have the custody of the funds, so that way you leverage the strong and secure consensus of the Ethereum blockchain, and you also write the rules of the exit and the conflicts. So basically, you send messages off-chain, it creates proof that could be understood on-chain to resolve conflicts, to enter, to exit. And then you have to create the link between off-chain and on-chain. So, of course, the subnetwork, the sidechain, the state channels listen to the blockchain and take the event into their states. And we have to find a way to send the state of our subnetwork on-chain. So usually it's using Merkle proofs and stuff like that. So now the Ethereum smart contract that is used to create these sidechains, again, rules to enter the subnetwork. You have to stake, you have to deposit, you have to give ID proof. The rules to exit. How can you say, now I want my funds back? Maybe you have to give a proof. Again, the smart contracts need to be aware of your subnetwork, and it's in the EVM that everything should happen, the exit, the resolution of conflicts. So that's how we use smart contracts today. So the concrete example of VariabL. So you have the strong consensus, the very strong and secure consensus on Ethereum, and you have our own consensus mechanism on VariabL. So if a user wants to trade on VariabL, he'll have to deposit Ether, let's say 10 Ether on the main chain. Our sidechain will see this event. It will go through our consensus mechanism. It will be accepted as, yes, he deposited on-chain. So then he'll be credited 10 Ether on VariabL. Then, using our fast and efficient consensus mechanism, he can do a lot of open long, close long. Like he can trade a lot, like he would on a decentralized exchange. And at the end, he will say on the subnetwork, on VariabL sidechain, I want to exit now. I want my 15 Ether back because I earned 5 Ether. And so again, transaction goes to the state of our sidechain, and then so our sidechain is stored as a Merkle tree, and we send the Merkle root on the VariabL smart contract on Ethereum. And then after the process of validating this state, because there's some times where you can challenge this state and things like that. So after the Merkle root has been validated, he can now request on-chain to withdraw the 15 Ether he asked. And for that, he gives a proof, the Merkle path of the state that is stored on our state. Anyway, so he gives a proof, and he gets the Ether back. So in the end, he could have done 1 million transactions on VariabL. He had only to do 2 transactions on-chain. And we, as a sidechain, had to do some transaction to update our state. So now, this could be applied to a lot of logic. And here, you've seen that I haven't talked about our consensus mechanism on the sidechain. And I think that this depends on the complexity of your logic and or your needs. So now let's talk about VariabL needs. So we do CFD. CFD again is a contract between 2 persons, one that is betting on a price increase and another on a price decrease. So if you buy a CFD, you buy today an Ether that you will sell tomorrow. So you're longing on Ether, and if you sell a CFD, you're shorting on Ether. So, and you can do that with leverage, meaning that you can, with 1 Ether, and if you choose the leverage 5, with 1 Ether, you can expose yourself to the price of 5 Ether. variable CFD are cash settled in Ether, so you deposit Ether and you get profit and loss in Ether. With that, you can control your risk again in Ether. Let's say you deposit 1 Ether, you short on 1 Ether. In the end, your position is stable. So this is the example of a bull. You have a starting price. Here it's a leverage 1, so he deposits 1 Ether and exposes himself to 1 Ether. If the price goes up, he has profit. Otherwise, he has loss. So Variable wants to be a competitive exchange, so competitive compared to centralized exchange, and a trustable one. So we need to have fast order matching. We want to be non-custodial, and we need our transaction to be publicly, that anyone can verify them, and so we need a deterministic financial engine. That way, anybody can rebuild the state of our sidechain. Another point is that since we have leveraged peer-to-peer CFD, at some point, let's say you have a shorter and a longer together, if the price decreases too much, the longer needs to be liquidated. So we need to have a way to liquidate people. We need to have a market engine that is always looking at the market and that acts. So that's why the consensus mechanism we have for now on Variable is a proof of authority with only one unique validator. That is our deterministic market engine. So it's completely centralized. We validate every transaction, but it's completely verifiable, meaning that anybody can have access to the off-chain transactions, and since the engine is deterministic, anybody can rebuild the state. So that way we keep the non-custodial properties, we are transparent and secure, and on top of that, okay, for now it's a POA with one validator, but later we can create incentivization, maybe for decentralizing the validation, but I'm not sure it's a fit for exchanges, but at least the verification, trying to decentralize, incentivize more better verifications. I think I don't have time, but yeah, on-chain we have the accounts, our identity, KYC verified. We deposit the value. Off-chain you trade, and you have the state channel that has the order book, the derivative contracts, and the market engine. So just what are for us the success factors? We need to be super precise about the specs, especially the financial specs. We need our market engine to be 100% clear, and that people that use our derivatives know exactly what will happen. Of course, on the layer 2 part, we need the game theory really strong. But the most important thing, I think, is we decentralize some important parts of what used to be exchanges. We need to be really as secure as NASA, and you've seen that with Banker recently. It's not that easy to decentralize stuff, and we want to be compliant. So yeah, that's really our work of the past 2 years. It was fast to create this on-chain alpha like Ether Delta, but we've been working super hard on legal sides, on scalability sides, and security sides. So now we have the prototype that is working. We are doing amazing work on the research. It's steadily researching, and we learn a lot of new things every day. And now our focus is to hiring outside of blockchain tech veterans that can bring the security and yeah. So I think that's all for that. And I want to thank Gnosis because they've created this event. It's an amazing team, so much inspiring. So thank you.